Hello everyone and welcome to the House of RADHA's first episode from the podcast series WE-R1. I'm Lucia Kuprova, your presenter, and I will be taking you on a journey and speaking to a diverse range of industry leaders from the creative industry, education, music and more. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the music industry. The pandemic of COVID-19 heavily affected this industry, and due to restrictions of individual countries, artists couldn't perform the scheduled tours, for example, and it's been estimated that the loss in sponsorships for the live performance venues is now calculated to be more than 10 billion American dollars. But there's been a new place for innovations, for example, moving more live venues online. But this is only about advertising the new music of artists. But what's more, as the artists haven't been able to do their performance and present their new music in front of the crowd, many of them decided to push back their new releases, and that affected music production segment of the industry as well. Today, I'm very happy to be speaking to Robert L.Smith, who is an Oscar and Grammy winning, Emmy nominated music producer, engineer, mixer based in New York City, and Robert has over 30 years of industry experience and has worked with some of the biggest names in the music industry. So hi Robert and welcome. I'm very glad you've been able to join us from very far New York City.
Yes, happy to. Thanks for having me.
So I believe it's a fresh morning in New York. So how are you feeling?
Yes, so far so good.
Robert, as I said, you've got a really rich experience and you worked with many big industry names like Lady Gaga, Christina Aguilera, Aerosmith, U2, or Sir Paul McCartney, and many more. And I won't name all of them because your list is really long and we will be sitting here for hours. And I'm sure you don't have the time as you're really busy. So can you share some of your journey with us from what inspired you to take a career in the music industry?
It's very simple and sort of a straight line in that, I was a music fan from when I was a little boy and just grew that into a career in the sense of I just never stopped working with music, recording, and from like doing sound for my neighbor's band to figuring out how to work with microphones. And I literally just never really stopped. When I moved to New York City from upstate New York, I went to sort of a technical school. It was like a short program, but I got a job before I even finished that schooling. And then I've just been going ever since. And every time I've worked at a facility, like I've always had some other studio reach out to me and want to hire me. And I grew that into a freelance career. And I've had 2 different companies. Funny thing is, it's all still the same as from when I was a kid, but now it's just how I pay my bills and live. It's like, so there's really not much of a difference. It's funny and sad at the same time, I think.
When you're into the music, can you share what's your favorite artist from when you were young, and has it changed when you're older now?
Not really. I mean, one of the first artists I really loved was the band Aerosmith.
Mm-hmm.
And I was honored to work with them on one of their biggest songs ever. Yeah, and I'm still a fan. There's sort of a thing in the creative process of don't work with your heroes. I understand what that is, but luckily Aerosmith was a good experience with that. You have a vision in your mind what that artist meant to you. So sometimes if you work with them, it can change what that all was for you. And it can be a traumatic experience.
Unfortunately, music industry has been hit really hard by pandemic, as due to restrictions, everything was closed, like the meeting of people was quite limited. In what way has it changed or affected your working life? And if so, how have you managed to adapt to this situation?
Luckily, I'm a part of a sort of a segment of the industry that actually was not affected much by that. And the main reason is I've been sort of working from home for 12 years. I have my own facility and, I didn't have to deal with an office or anything like that. One of the strange parts about last year is so many people were home working on music, that it was actually a good year for me in the sense of, people needed a lot of help and with their projects. And I also had to like teach many clients how to set up their own recording situation at home. They couldn't leave their house, but they still needed to get the work done. Most of my friends are musicians, and those were most affected were the ones that live off of touring. So it's been seriously challenging. And I've known many that have actually had to move on to something else, especially those that were more of like a behind the scenes thing. If you were like a technician for a tour, you couldn't afford to sit around for 2 years, so you had to do something else. Same thing with venues, clubs and stuff.
Yeah, that's actually interesting what you said, that many artists were actually pushed to kind of set up their own studio, home studio. So I'm just curious, like, how much is it? Just what's the budget for kind of setting up just a basic studio?
It's relatively inexpensive these days. Like I have one artist who I've been working with since the 90s. She had a computer, but you need a microphone, you need a stand for the microphone, and you need an interface, which is like a little box. You plug your microphone into that box and that plugs into the computer. And then you have a software program that you use. I've been recommending a system that I think like under like $300. But the thing is most of these people that got these systems, now they had to learn the software. It's not instant like, oh yeah, I just bought it and now I'm recording. And there's a lot of hand holding. This is what you need to do, or, send you a template, open this up in your software. This will allow you to kind of get recording quickly, as opposed to trying to figure it out from scratch. The retailers that sell gear, last year was their best year ever because so many people were sitting at home and were like, oh, I always wanted to play guitar. Let me buy that guitar. And
yeah, it's actually true because you're spending time home mostly. Suddenly, like from a really hectic work life, you're forced to stay home. And what you're going to do? Music is really like a medicine. Looking to the long term, the music industry itself is not going to be really changed because there are still those big music labels and the music is going to be produced all the time. So there's no problem, but more problem is about live venues, and many artists start using social media. So it became a really strong platform. So do you think there will be much change in the future in how music is distributed out?
The live thing was obviously affected the most. The way music sort of produced and distributed it's all online these days. There's not much physical product with the exception of vinyl. So this romantic return to vinyl. I'm really curious how long it lasts before people are like, enough of this. Just give me a CD. Or the one thing that will never change is people always want music and they always need music. So they'll do whatever they have to do to get it. The thing I wish would change is that there are too many people that have never really bought music. I mean, have you ever physically bought an album?
Oh, I bought many.
Oh,
I've
good.
got loads of CDs. I really support musicians. If I love someone, some of the artists, I really feel like a duty of fan, to support them, because even I buy a CD or I'm going to the concert. So.
Now that's a really big thing because once the world sort of switched to streaming, with Spotify and iTunes, the income for musicians dropped dramatically. That's why you always see basically very old but legendary artists. They're always touring because their income from sales has shrunk dramatically. So they got to go on the road to pay the bills. Those mansions are expensive to keep up. So, as much as they're like the superstars, there's also the people that aren't superstars, that are full-time musicians. They're the ones that have been affected the most. If you think of it, they're sort of like the middle class of music. There's more of them than there are superstars. So because they didn't have the income from the sales originally. So they're the ones that really got hit the most. Their expenses are very high to go on tour. And then when they're not making much money anyway, it's like all of a sudden it's like they're actually not making any money. And it's just like, oh, wait, we can't do this. I don't know how that's going to play out as far as future goes, because there are people that had to move on to something else, especially if they had a family and a home. And, I know many friends play in wedding bands. I lost count of how many musicians from those bands where it's like delivering for Amazon.
When I listen to many interviews with artists, they say, oh yeah, it's great. They're still producing music, but it's still different to record music in a studio and perform in front of the crowd. Do you think that the music industry and its all attributes from production to advertising might fully recover soon?
It's still too early to tell. Here, technically on the fourth wave or the fifth wave, depending on who you ask, and the whole Delta thing. And there have been many tours already that were expected to happen this fall that are already canceling. How can you as an artist go out and perform? I mean, I know you got to make money, but at the same time, you're putting people's health at risk. It's still going to be a while. I remember saying a year ago that we'll probably still be dealing with this in summer of 2022, and that's what it's looking like.
Mm-hmm. It's true that it's very different, like in America and maybe here in the UK, that all the restrictions are kind of lifted. So, and I think like many young people are happy. Do you agree?
No, I do. There's sort of the two sides kind of bumping the people that are still doing shows, but then those are saying, nope, we're holding off. It's just showing how little we know and how little we know how to deal with this. Yeah, so it feels like everyone's just trying things to see if anything can work. Just seems like it's still too early. Guys, you got to wait.
Robert, you are an industry speaker in educational institutions too, and you mentor to many artists like young musicians and creators who want a career in the music industry. What would you say to our new generation of artists and kind of learners who want to work in the music industry?
The thing you have to realize is that those of us that do this, it's not really a job in the traditional sense. You do your 9 to 5, you have weekends off. Those of us that do this, it's more a life. It's what we do. It's how we feel sort of right in the world. That's sort of the first question you have to ask yourself. What do you want from this? The one mistake that people come into this, I want to be famous, make lots of money and stuff like that. That's actually not the goal for any of us, really. It's like if that comes along, great, but it's not why we do this. You have to want to be in it for the right reasons. It is hard. It's not like it is in the movies or something like that, where it's, oh yeah, you make that call and all of a sudden you're on stage. It's like, no, no. For anyone you see that's an overnight sensation, well, look at their past 10 years and see what's been going on, because they've actually been working at it all that time to get to that moment that you notice them. That's the first thing that you have to know really what you're getting into, because there are people that come into it and don't believe that, and then they start and they see that and it's like, oh, wait a minute, no, I actually don't want that. Tried to do it like on almost like a part-time basis. You can't. It doesn't work that way. You have to really be all in. You can't just like do this as a hobby. Nothing wrong with that. It's a whole different thing. But when you kind of do this as, your career, your job, your life, it's its own like planet in a way.
Yeah. As we were talking about pandemic, and we've got like 3 decades of experience working with diverse artists, musicians, and creatives. And I know you said like your work life hasn't really changed, dude, like thanks to pandemic. But is there anything special you really miss about music industry from pre-pandemic times?
Yeah, I mean, just being around people. For this industry, there's a few different industry conferences where, we all gather in a city or something. That's when you see people. I miss seeing friends and colleagues. Can only go so far with the Zoom thing. So yeah, I definitely miss that for sure. I'm fortunate to still do a lot of big sessions in the sense of orchestra dates. I'll do a lot of stuff for films, where I'll have anywhere between 20 and 100 people in a room. And so obviously those haven't been happening. So you look forward to those coming back. That will be great. Just can't beat that kind of energy when you have that number of talented people in that space and just being able to pool all their skills together and present this incredible music. So yeah, I definitely miss the social thing. On that side of it, it is messing with me a little bit mentally of being in a group of people. Like I wouldn't be going to a show right now. And, I've been invited to a few recently and it's just, no, I don't feel like it's the right time yet. As much as I'd love the artist, I'm going to wait until this is over. The risk isn't worth it for me.
Mm-hmm. As you're saying, it's kind of coming to normal in New York, that there are some shows opening. So what's the situation on Broadway now, actually?
Well, most of it is opening up on the 14th of September. That's like some of the first shows. You can't get in if you're not vaccinated, and you have to have proof. And I think with some of them, you actually be vaccinated, and you actually have to have proof of a test within like 48 hours of the time of the show. So they're not messing around with that. And I feel like they're doing it the right way. I mean, I know there are some that can't for medical reasons. There are many that you can't use that excuse.
Yeah, I agree that I just feel like it became really political.
Oh,
Whole
completely,
situation around
completely.
the vaccinations. It is ridiculous. And I just gave up on arguing about these things.
Yeah.
I don't get it, and those people won't get it too. So it's what I noticed that, for example, the British artist Harry Styles, he announced the tour, and he said that he will actually ask for vaccination proof on his gigs. So from your point of view, what do you think was the situation in the music industry? Is there more people who are really trying to be responsible and kind of influence people to get vaccinated in the USA?
Well, as far as those in the music industry, yeah, everyone's getting vaccinated. I mean, I've actually lost a few projects because the client wasn't vaccinated and they were like, oh no, I had one project that was going to go on for 6 weeks. And I went through all the details, boom, 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 boom. And at the end, I said, oh, and just so you know, everyone on my team is vaccinated. And he's like, oh, I'm not doing that. And he just walked away from the project. All right, well, there you go.
It's your choice, yeah, but if it's just one person, it's good. But if it was more people like this,
Yeah. Well, there's a few, but I mean, but it's just interesting how it's become a thing.
Robert, you're really a big inspiration in creative industry. And can you tell me who has inspired you in your creative journey, and who has been maybe your mentor in your beginnings of the career?
Yeah, no, I've certainly had my share of heroes, that's for sure. The thing that makes my journey slightly different is that as much as I wanted this career, what inspired me were people that I didn't want to be. Do you know what I mean by that? Where where I came from, the town I came from, there were a few people that I saw that I don't want to be him, I don't want to be him, and I don't want to be him. So as far as me getting started, it was that was more of an incentive to get out of town and do something with my life rather than just be them. Their lives are no different than when they were in high school. But once I came to New York, there were a few guys I worked with that helped me along the way, which was very helpful. But at the same time, there were also many that were not helpful because this is a competitive field. And there were some that could have helped me, but didn't. And I'll never forget that, and that's why I think as far as, when I mentor students and all that, I remember those people that didn't help me, and for no reason. It's I think it was more out of their insecurity. How am I threatening your job? It's you've been doing, at that point, you've been doing this for decades on your own. You're threatened by me and I've been doing this for 2 weeks, So I never wanted to be that guy. So I've always been really open about sharing my knowledge and experience. Because the one thing you do, once you do figure all this out, you do learn that you could literally give everybody everything and it'll still be different with them because of how you think. That's the difference. You can give somebody the exact instructions on how to do something. And if you listen to their version versus my version, they'll still be completely different. It's how we hear and how we perceive what we're doing. So once you kind of figure that out, it seems kind of they get all very hush hush about their oh no, I can't tell you my secrets. It's oh man, you and your secrets.
I think you're right that they felt insecure because they probably saw the potential in you, that you're going to be a threat for them.
I mean, that's very generous, but I'm no, I think they were just really insecure.
It's good that you're open to help the students because, from this help, they will remember and they will do the same in the future, when they become really pros. So it's really a good word and work you're doing. So thank you for that. As I say, in this world, today, the pandemic showed a lot of characters of people.
Oh, yeah.
The worst in many cases.
Yeah.
Worst characters.
Oh, yeah.
And, there's not many people who are actually in these times are willing to help you. So it's brilliant. And with your DeFi recordings, can you share maybe some future projects you're planning to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things in the works, still in the planning stages. a lot of the stuff I do, I can't really talk about till it's out. So that's always a bit of a downer for people. It's just like, yeah, well, I have a lot of files on my hard drive, but I can't tell you what they are. So, there's definitely some promising things out there. There's some things that are like still on hold because of the health issues these days. So it's a little bit up in the air. I mean, the one thing that I can say is that I'm fortunate that I'm literally working on a new song every day, and it just keeps coming. And I think that's because of my experience and the energy I put out there. That's why it does. I'm very much a sort of a student of that law of attraction thing, the way that works. If you put out the right energy, you get it back, and if you put out the wrong energy, you get that back as well. So it's really important to have your eye on the prize, do the right thing by people, because really at the end of the day, it's all about how you work with people. It's not about how you work with technology. People come back to you for how you treat them, not just for your skills. You have to have all that stuff together. Those are the people that are successful. Seems like they never have to look for work. Between the work they do and what they put out in the world, it all comes back to them.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Thank you for the nice words at the end. And thank you again for joining us today. And good luck to New York, Robert.
Yeah, well, thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you again for listening. This was the first episode of the House of RADHA's podcast series WE-R1 with our guest Robert L.Smith. If you'd like to know more about Robert's work, just search for DeFi Recordings on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you enjoyed this episode, let us know on our social media. You can find the House of RADHA on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok as well. We're looking forward to hearing from you, and in next week's episode we're going to talk about fashion and photography with another interesting guest, so stay tuned and goodbye.